Golf Mom Mindset podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Nicole. This show is all about the heart behind the game, the mindset, the motivation, and the moments that shape junior golfers and their families, both on and off the course. Today, I am so excited to welcome our guest, Alyssa Morahan, a mental performance coach who has spent the past 7 years helping golfers perform under pressure while sustaining their love for the game. Through her coaching practice, Alyssa works with players at every level, from elite juniors to professional athletes, guiding them to show up in their most confident and present selves on the course. Alyssa is also a former NCAA Division I and Division II golfer, so she knows the frustration firsthand and the mental and emotional challenges that come with competitive golf. She holds a dual master's degree, one in sports psychology and motor behavior, and another in experimental psychology, where her research focused on the psychology of performance golf. Her approach blends science and experience to help players navigate setbacks, perform under pressure, and build a healthy, sustainable relationship with the game. Let's dive into this inspiring conversation with Alyssa Morahan. Alyssa, we are so happy to have you here as our guest today. I am so thrilled that we can finally connect because I've been following you on Instagram, and the information you put out on mindset, mental tips, and your own experience with golf is life-changing. And I would love to dive in first with asking about your experience as a junior golfer, and then what led you on the road to becoming a collegiate athlete.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. I'm so excited to be here and have this conversation.
Thank you. Yes, likewise. How old were you when you became a junior golfer? And what did that journey look like for you growing up?
That's a good question. So my journey into golf was a little bit different, I think, especially from a lot of junior players now. You see players starting when they're 2, 3, 4, 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, my dad was the golfer in my family. My mom didn't play. And he always tried to get me into golf. And it was like, let's go to the driving range. And for me, it was like boring. I don't like it. I didn't like golf at all. And so I was in gymnastics for a long time and eventually just decided, didn't really love gymnastics. It wasn't for me. And so I ended up really getting into golf like late middle school, kind of going into high school. And that's kind of where I started. And so I ended up playing on my high school team. And that was really my first experience as a junior golfer. I didn't really play in any junior events and kind of just got thrown into it. And I didn't have a girls' team at my high school, so I had to play on the boys' team. I was fortunate enough to make the team, but it was definitely like a really big learning curve.
Sure.
And so all of my experience really came playing in high school. I started to play in a few just local junior events, but really got the golf bug. I fell in love with it. And I said, this is something I want to do past high school. But that's really how it started for me, kind of late, but better late than never, I suppose.
Sure. Well, it sounds like you had a natural talent and ability, which I'm sure helped you. What would you say was the hardest part about jumping into the tournament world in high school, having never done tournaments? And then on top of that, playing with boys, what was the most challenging part? And then what was also the most rewarding?
Yeah, I would say some of the most challenging parts of that was just feeling like I was behind. Like I didn't really deserve to be there, or that people were going to figure out that they had much more experience than me. And so it was really like this personal pressure of, okay, like I have to prove that I'm good enough to be here, that I've like caught up somehow magically all of these years that I haven't been playing. And that was difficult. And then also just playing with boys is difficult because they hit it far, right? They hit it far. They play the game a little bit differently. But I also think that that was really an advantage to me long term because I learned to play in that environment where, number one, I had a different sport background. So I did kind of have the ability to play athletically and to hit it kind of far. And that became one of my
Sure.
strengths of my game.
Yeah, it
And
sounds like
just kind of
it
being in
pushed
this
you.
like, yeah, absolutely. Right. Like it pushed me to be better. And that was good. And I think the rewarding part about it was that I could prove to myself that even if I had a different path than other people, that I could still make it work for me, and that it didn't matter that my journey looked a little bit different than everybody else's, that I was still there and I was putting myself out there and achieving goals that I had set for myself. And that was really rewarding. So
That's fantastic. That's great. Thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
How did the
Yeah.
recruiting process go for college and how, I mean, did you seek out the colleges you wanted to attend? Did someone contact you? Were they coming to the tournaments at the school? The recruiters, how did all that work? Because this is all very new to me and in terms of how that process is.
Yeah. So I would say my process was a little bit different just because I got a later start and also a lot has changed just now based on the years that have passed. But for my process, there was a few things that were happening. One, I had coaches reaching out from like D3 schools, smaller schools, and I talked to them. I kind of like was trying to weigh out what I wanted to do. Ultimately, they weren't schools that was interested in attending just like academically. So what I ended up doing was starting to reach out to schools that I was interested in and really kind of pitching myself to coaches. I actually ended up taking a gap year after my senior year of high school because I wanted a little bit more time to get experience, to play in more tournaments, and to be ready to join some programs that I thought would be a better fit for me.
Hmm.
So I took that gap year, played in a bunch of tournaments, worked really hard on my game, dropped my handicap by many strokes, and really like prepared myself to step into this next step of my golf journey. And ended up finding a program that fit really well for me in Florida at the University of Tampa and started playing there. I played in every tournament for the first 2 years that I was there and played well enough to get some interest from a Division I program and ended up transferring for my last 2 years to a Division I program.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was quite the journey, but
Yeah.
I got there.
Well, and what's interesting too is, your first comment of taking a gap year. I mean, my automatic assumption would be that that would be a hindrance to getting into college, or that they just wouldn't even consider anyone that wasn't technically still in school. So the fact that you did that successfully, worked, improved your game, and then still was able to go is really inspiring and fascinating. And I think gives a lot of students hope that, sometimes you can take a different path and it doesn't mean, it's the wrong path. It just means it's a different path and you can still get to your goal. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
So, talk to me about a little bit. I know we mentioned when we first originally talked that there was one point that you did start to fall out of love with the game. What was the catalyst to that? And then how did you pull yourself out of that to then get into the career you're in now, which we can touch on here shortly?
Yeah. Yeah, I think golf is one of those sports where it's very challenging and it's one of those things where you just fail a lot more than you win. And it can be really draining that way, especially if you don't have the right perspective or mindset going into it. And so for me, college felt like this continuous grind where I was always working to prove myself and also prove to myself that I could get better and be better and like achieve these goals that I had set for myself, shoot the scores I wanted to shoot. And ultimately, what ended up happening was I had so much pressure on myself and so high of expectations that I was always pushing for that next big bump in like, okay, I'm going to shoot this score. I'm going to finish this place in a tournament. And when that didn't happen or when it was more challenging than I thought it should be based on the expectations I had for myself, it felt very personal. And so it got to this point where I was just so hard on myself. I wasn't enjoying the game. It felt like this really big test of me. And I wasn't able to get to this place where it was like, I'm enjoying this, I'm improving, and I'm feeling good about it. It was more like, I'm testing myself, I'm failing, and I don't understand why I'm doing this anymore.
Sure.
And at that point, I didn't want to play. And so I came out of college. I finished my college career and it was okay, right? I think that looking back now, I think I definitely could have done things differently and enjoyed it more and played better probably. But I came out of it just kind of exhausted from the sport. And I didn't at that moment really understand what was next for me with the game. It was like,
Hmm.
okay, this is over now. My identity was that I was a golfer and a college golfer.
Hmm.
And now
Yeah.
what do I do with that?
Hmm.
And I didn't really want to play because it was like I didn't really have anything to play for because I had for so long told myself that I play for scores or I play for my team and now what's the point?
Right.
And also it just wasn't fun. And
Hmm.
so I stepped away from the game for probably like 5 or 6 years, didn't play,
Wow. Okay.
but I was still going to school for psychology. So I was going to school for sports psychology and figuring out what am I going to do with this because I always thought it was golf. And at this point, I wasn't sure about that.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Was there a part of you in college that had dreams of going pro, or was this more of using golf as a means to like learn through school and everything? Or did you have visions of going pro and then that change course along the way?
I think when I was in high school, like falling in love with the game and seeing that I was getting better really quickly, there were probably thoughts of like, oh, this would be really fun to play professionally. And then once I got to college, I think that I struggled so much with the mental part of the game that those dreams kind of went away because I didn't want that life for myself of grinding and being so hard on myself and having to like go through the mental struggle part of the game because
Sure.
I didn't really have a way to handle that very well.
Yeah.
And so the dream went from wanting to play professionally to sports psychology and enjoy the game and play better
Sure.
using their mind for them. So it kind of flip flopped that way. Yeah.
Well, I still think it's a great route and you have so much experience. So beyond just learning, and getting a degree in that, it's like you have personal experience to contribute to that. So I find that fascinating. And a couple of the coaches that I've talked to already said that, there are a lot of college golfers that they don't have necessarily dreams of going pro. And I think that's totally fine. I think everyone's perception is, oh, if you're playing college golf, you're going to go pro. And there's nothing wrong with changing your mind along the way, right? Or
Mhm.
not even having that dream because there's so many different roles in golf that you could have and still work in the golf industry if that's what you desire. And going pro doesn't have to be the end game. And it doesn't mean that you're not a failure, right? And I think college is such a good discovery time. Like even for me, I started off wanting to go the broadcasting route. I took
Yeah.
internships and learned very soon that as much as I like it, it's wasn't the life that I wanted. I would hear from professionals themselves and I was like, man, like they never see their kids. Like, I don't know if I want this for myself. And in high school, that's what everyone's like, oh, you're going to be the next Katie Couric and all this. So I tied my identity
Yeah.
to that too. And
Yep.
in many ways, I held on to the dream longer because other people had that dream for me. So it was really hard to come to that realization of it's not my dream anymore and I need to let go, even though other people have that for me, which is great. You have support, but you don't want to let people down, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so beautifully said. We can definitely tend to hold on to things because other people want them for us or because they
Yeah.
see the potential in us.
Yeah.
But that doesn't actually mean that that's meant to be our path or that that has to be the path that we choose for ourselves. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, with that, I would love to dive into what's led you to where you are now and running your consulting
Hmm.
company, which it goes by the name of your name, Alyssa Moran. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yep.
Awesome. So you have been helping golfers from junior golfers to collegiate athletes to even professionals strengthen their mental game over the last 7 years. What first drew you to focus specifically on the mental side of golf performance, and then also led you to major in that, and then now have a career in that?
Yeah. So this is right. If we go back to my time as a junior golfer into college golf, there was always this mental game piece that was coming up for me. It was I would practice really well, I would play well when there was no pressure, and then when I would go out in competition, was like, what's happening? Where did my game go? Right? Like this is a lot harder. I don't understand. It feels different. And so there was always some part of me that was interested in psychology. In high school, I was taking AP psychology. When I got to undergrad, I was majoring in psychology. So I always had this psychology interest. And for me, it was always about how can I help other people improve their lives in some way and just become the best version of themselves. And through college and playing golf at the same time, I had this ability to kind of see like, how would this apply to golf? And so I wasn't necessarily introduced to sports psychology in any sort of real way, but I
Sure.
was, reading a couple books, right? Dr. Bob Rotella, right? Some of the like big names out there, I had
Right.
access to those types of resources. But ultimately, I just saw for myself that number one, it felt like the mental game was getting in the way of my performance, but it was also getting in the way of how I felt about myself and the joy that I was having in the game. And so I just sort of like started to think, okay, what kind of path would I want here? And talk to my professors, and they were like, yeah, sports psychology is a real option for you. And because you have this athletic background, it could be a really good fit. And so I started to just kind of figure out what would this look like and how would I want to use this. I started talking to my professors about, what does this look like as a career path? And I saw that the mental part of the game was something that I struggled with so much. And so that was really what I wanted to focus on is not necessarily the swing or some of the technical parts, but how does this mental part of the game impact performance, but also your experience of the sport and your enjoyment in the sport.
Would you say, and because I see this in my own son who's 8 years old, he's very hard on himself, and similar to you, he practices really well. Then a tournament comes up, and it's like he almost freezes in a way, or doesn't do as well.
Mhm.
And then he's really hard on himself. But I've noticed, and I've said, this is why I want to do the work with him now, because no matter what he does, I feel like this would come out. This comes out in him when he does homework and he misses something. It comes out when he's playing Legos and, it doesn't get it just right. And I've seen the frustration. So sometimes I'm like, I wonder if it's just how he is. And part of me as his mom needed to help coach him up and get inside his mind to have a positive mindset. But it definitely showcases in golf, but I'm seeing it in other areas of his life. Would you say that was also the case for you, or was this solely pertaining just to golf?
Definitely true for me in other areas of my life. It sounds very similar to me in that I had really high expectations for myself. I would consider myself someone who dealt with perfectionism throughout my life. I want things to go a certain way. I want them to go how I planned. I work really hard, so I expect the outcome to match that, right? It's like I put in the effort, so it should just go well, right?
I
It should
understand. Yes,
work
I
out. I
understand.
should get it just right.
Right.
Yeah. And so that was definitely something that I saw outside of golf as well. It was a pattern for me.
Sure, sure. Well, these are great skills to learn. And like you said, better late than never, right? Because some people go their whole
Mhm.
life and never learn the skills to master that. And it affects every facet of their life, including relationships, their work environment. So the fact that you've mastered this and you're helping others is fantastic. Many parents listening to the podcast have junior golfers who are deeply passionate, but also frustrated. What are some ways parents can help their kids stay motivated, yet keep their love for the game even through the ups and downs? What would be something you would say to the parents?
Yeah, I think that this is a really great question because the number one thing that I want for my athletes is to have a love for the game and a motivation that comes from themselves, not from other external things. And so the way that I typically look at this is three things. Number one is this sense of autonomy, which is really giving young players the ability to choose for themselves. What does their practice look like? What things do they want to work on, right? Just giving them some sense of control so that they're motivated because they're choosing what to do, right? It's their path, it's their practice, and they have this investment that's coming from them.
Hmm.
The second piece is to figure out, why does this player love the game, right? Why do they want to play? What is it that they enjoy about being out there? Do they like the challenge of trying to get better? For some of the young players I work with, it's like, I like being out there because it's pretty and I
Yeah.
like the trees and I like the water fountains, right? It's like, right, these pieces of the game that maybe we're not even thinking about that they really enjoy, and being able to use that as the driver, right? It's like, let's go back to, okay, we're out here. Maybe it's frustrating right now, but look at this cool landscape or look at this beautiful course that we get to be at. And let's enjoy this time that we have together. And it takes some of the pressure of score away from it and goes back to those deeper reasons for being out there. And the last piece of it is really just having this ability to support regardless of outcome. And so, right, having the joy of, yes, we're out here, we're playing, we're working on something, we're trying to improve, but there is support for you regardless of what you shoot or the outcome. And it's really about the effort you're putting in and the fact that you're showing up for yourself, and being able to move through that is something that as a parent you're proud of, as an outsider you're proud of, and hopefully that the child is proud of for themselves. And that'll help them keep going regardless of the frustrations or the moments where performance doesn't match up to what their expectations were, because they have these deeper reasons and the system around them that supports their ability to keep going.
Do you see a lot of parents struggling with that, just from your own experience playing and then also even just in coaching some? Do you see that maybe some parents have more of the passion than the child themselves?
I do see that sometimes. I see parents who maybe they have their own expectations of how things are go, or maybe they're kind of living vicariously through their child now and they really want it for them. And I think a lot of times maybe the kid wants it too, but they're not as vocal about it. Either
Hmm.
way, there's definitely this aspect of the parent wanting it and kind of pushing it on the child in the parent's way rather than it being driven by the child's way, which is going to develop over time, right? As a really young player, it's going to look different than when they're in high school or college. And I think being able to really invest in what it looks like for wherever your child is right now is the most important piece, right?
Sure.
If it's wanting to go out there and be creative and think about how shots would look like if they were built out with Legos or something, right? Like those types of things really allows the child to be in the driver's seat rather than the parent driving it. Because one of the fastest ways to hurt somebody else's motivation is by putting your own expectations or drivers on them. And so it's like a lot of times I'll hear, oh, well, my parent is going to buy me this when I shoot this score or I break this, record that I have. And that's great. And it might motivate them in the short term, but in the long term, it's not going to be as good of a motivator because it doesn't come from the child themselves.
Yeah, that makes sense. What
Mhm.
age would you say, parents should allow their kid? You talked about being autonomous and that independence.
Mhm.
Obviously, if they're 6, 7, 8, they still need mom and dad to really drive the bus
Yes.
and literally, taking them to practice and stuff.
Yeah.
So what age do you think, when they're, still young enough that they need mom and dad or mom and dad are still caddying, at what age do you think that's when parents need to pull back a bit and say, you choose your own schedule and you need to be the one to show how committed you are and, turn the reins over to them? What age do you think is a good age to do that at?
Yeah, I think that that really depends on the child and kind of where they're at in their journey. I think, once kids are getting like later in middle school towards high school, they can probably have more autonomy in terms of like, driving, like this is what I want for myself, right? But I think even at a young age, let's say 6, 7, 8 years old, you can still give moments of autonomy where it's like, okay, we're going to go practice now. Like, let's go practice. Would you like to start with putting or chipping? Or would you want to spend time on the range? Right. And even those little moments of they get to choose allows them to feel that motivation that they've chosen this for themselves. Right. Like, I'm doing this because I want to. Right. Like, all right, let's start with this putting game that we're going to do together. And that just puts it in their hands a little bit, which I think can start a lot younger, which is great.
Definitely. I love that. Well, and I never thought to do that with like the actual golf game itself. I let my son like pick his snacks and then he's gotten really into, cause he has so many different gloves and hats. So it's like he likes to coordinate or match or mismatch the clothes,
Yeah,
but letting him kind of pick, and always fun to see how he chooses to dress, but it motivates him and he gets excited about it. So maybe I should push that also into the golf game itself.
absolutely. Yeah.
What would you say are some of the common mental and emotional challenges you see among young golfers today that maybe didn't exist, maybe weren't talked about as much as when you were playing? And where do you see emotional and mental challenges in junior golfer that might be different today than it was, when you and I were growing up?
Yeah. The number one thing is the comparison that comes from social media. You hit it right on the head. It's this ability to what we think is see what everyone else is doing. Of course, we're only seeing just one snapshot of that, but it's this feeling like everyone is doing better than me. Everyone has different opportunities or better opportunities than me. And this comparison of I'm not where I should be or I'm not where I need to be and I'm behind. And it's interesting because I felt that, but I felt it for different reasons, right? Because I started later and now it's just in these kids' faces on social media, this comparison. And I think that goes also hand in hand with this culture of junior golf that has shifted towards playing younger, specializing in the sport younger. And so I work with a lot of junior players who feel like they can't compete against players who are homeschooled and who do golf 24/7 and maybe they go to a typical school and they're not able to focus on golf in the same way. And so that comes with a lot of really frustrations and just feeling like I don't stack up to what other people are doing. And so I go into the tournament feeling like I'm already behind
Mm.
and I'm already struggling because I'm thinking about, well, they're better than me. I don't deserve to win because they're going to play better. And so I think that's the number one thing. I think the second thing that I see most often is just this feeling like my parents are investing a lot in my golf and I don't want to let them down. And this isn't always even something that comes from the parents. The parents might not even be putting pressure, but the child feels it. And it's really difficult to sit with that, right? As a really young player. And they
Mhm.
want to do the best for their parents because they see that their parents care and they want it for them and they want it for themselves, but it is like a lot of weight to carry. So I would say those are the two big things that I hadn't really even thought about from how I grew up to what I'm seeing now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and as you mentioned, the comparison game can be real for sure. And even,
Mhm.
I'm guilty of it as a parent. Hearing from other parents what they're doing, all the different tournaments the kids are in, all the different trainers they have, and then of course social media. And it's hard even as a parent to not feel like, am I doing enough for my kid? And then to just take a step back. And to your point, not everything is going to work for every kid. Some kids are going to thrive, in the homeschool environment. Some kids are not. Some kids are going to thrive with X number of hours of practice a week. And some kids are like, well, I also want to do other sports too. So I think you probably
Mhm.
have to take it kid by kid. And even in some of the families I've interviewed where they have a couple kids in the golf world within the family. And they always say, one kid is very different than the other. So that's always interesting to see. And as a parent, that's probably hard to navigate too, where one kid's really driven, the other kid's like, well, yeah, I'll show up, but they happen to be really good, right? So then the
Yep.
kid who's practicing a lot all the time, the brother or sister's beating them and they're like, what the heck? They didn't even practice. So I can see where that would even be a hard dynamic of comparison, even within the family. Golf parents want to protect their kids from failure. And I'm guilty of that too, even though failure can be a good thing, right? But you talk about the benefit of letting players figuring it out on their own. Why is the discomfort in failure or just, not reaching their goal so important for growth, in your opinion?
Yeah. Failure is one of those things that we tend to have a negative connotation with, right? Failure is bad. Failure feels bad. It means that we didn't reach our goal, but failure is how we learn, right? When we make mistakes, that's how we learn. When you're a baby learning to walk, you fall down many, many times before you figure out how to stay
Yeah.
stable and take those steps. And it's the same thing in other areas of life and in golf that failure is how we learn. And so I think a lot of times what happens is I see parents want to, and I feel this way sometimes as a mental coach too, you want to swoop in and just fix it. I want to
Yes.
make it feel better. I want to make sure that it's not too hard. It doesn't feel bad. It doesn't we think that people are going to kind of get knocked down and stay down if it feels too bad. And really, what we want to foster in kids and in really any golfer is that it's okay to fall down and be knocked down. And that's kind of how you figure out, okay, well, what went wrong? And how can I use my strengths to pull myself out of this and learn from it and get better rather than viewing it as something that's horrible and everything went wrong and now I don't know what to do about it or feeling like I need someone else to come in and get me out of this, right? We really want to instill this idea that failure is how we learn and failure is an opportunity rather than something that is bad because like I said earlier, failure is just a part of golf and it's going to happen a lot. You're not going to go out there and win every tournament. And I think that's something that, especially with young golfers who have a lot of success early, and then other players start to catch up or the fields get a little bit more competitive as they get older, it's really hard to deal with this transition from being the best all of the time to, okay, well, now there are other people who are also going to be really good.
Right.
And maybe I come in second or third, and maybe I played really well. And that's not necessarily a failure, but maybe it's an opportunity to figure out, okay, well, what can I do better to continue to help myself grow and not see that as such a bad thing or a personal thing.
Sure. Well, and I think, I mean, you have such wonderful insight, and I myself am already learning so much from you. And I've definitely made mistakes as the mom and caddy where I have allowed my son's emotions to become my emotions. He's sad, I'm sad. He's upset, I'm upset. He's frustrated, I'm frustrated. And it's been bad. It's not worked well for us. So I've
Yeah.
had to dig deep and kind of do my own therapy just of reflection, right? Of why, when he's upset, why does that even trigger me to the point of, he's now feeling my frustration. So I've had to learn to try to be calm no matter what he's feeling. And I still struggle with it. I have not mastered it at all, but I'm definitely more aware now. And I think talking with other golf parents has really helped, but it's not easy because I think you want to jump in and fix it. And especially when they're upset and they're, 7 years old out there crying and
Mhm.
you're crying there with them behind your sunglasses.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
it's hard to just almost let them feel the pain, right? Because you
Mhm.
want to fix it like a boo-boo almost. You want to put a Band-Aid on
Yep.
it and kiss it and it all go away. But to your point, having the growth failure, as we call it, is actually a good thing. And just in my son and seeing him transition from 6 years old to now 8, going on 9, the struggles we've had, I do think has helped him. Like looking back, I'm like, I'm actually glad he had that. And personally, I'm glad he had it now than when he's 16.
Yeah.
Because I mean,
Yeah.
by then
Yeah.
he should really have it in check. But like I said, it was either going to come out in golf or it's going to come out in another area of life or activity because it's just something with maturity he has to go through the pain to get to the other side. And I can now say, having watched it, we have gotten to the other side. I mean, we still have our setbacks, but it's been a beautiful thing to watch. So I hope to give other parents hope that if they're in the thick of it and feel like this is never going to end. And then times as a parent, especially for me not being in this world, I'm like this, even his dad was like, this is not the sport for him. Like this is not. And every time we would say, hey, you're done. We're going to put a pause on it. There would be tears and like, how can you take this away from me? He would be so
Yeah.
upset. And that's when we both realized, well, okay, he does love this. He just doesn't love the failure of it, but we need to help him pursue this passion and help him find the right tools to navigate. What you posted on Instagram, I'm not sure when, but you do a lot of good visuals, which I love because I think kids really resonate with that. But you did like a box with the brain and everything. Do you know which one I'm
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
share a little bit more about that and how you use your visual examples to kind of showcase things like, the brain example that you had.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to use a lot of visuals because I think it makes things easier to understand. And I think it on this topic that we're talking about of like being okay with the hard moments and being okay with the failure moments. I think something that, comes up a lot is this idea that we put things into two boxes, right? So this is a little different than the one that I had, but I'll talk
Okay,
about it in this
sure.
way too, right? So it's like we have a brain and we have a couple boxes that we put things in. Good, bad, positive, negative. And we tend to think, I need to take all of these things that are negative or bad and make them good.
Mm,
And my perspective and my approach when working with golfers is that things don't have to necessarily just be black or white, good, bad, positive, negative. We have this brain that has so many things going on, so many thoughts coming up, so many emotions coming up,
hmm
and they just are. They're just experiences that we have. If we're feeling sad on the golf course, it's not necessarily bad, right? It's telling us something, right? If we have this brain, what is it saying to us in that moment when the tears are coming up? It's probably saying, this is really hard right now.
Right.
I really want this. It's really important to me. I've worked really hard and this is feeling really hard right now. And I'm not really sure what to do with that, right? And
hmm
so in those moments, it's like using the visuals can help. Number one, not put things into boxes, right? Just to understand that like it is the experience. And also that it's not necessarily a bad thing and that it's just our brain trying to tell us about what's important to us. And it gives us the opportunity to decide what to do next and what is it that we need. And so I think if we were to go back to this like moment that you're talking about on the golf course where your child's upset, you're upset, and it's just like, oh, this feels very emotionally charged and I don't really know
hmm
what to do.
hmm
Those are great opportunities as a parent, as a coach, as a caddy, whatever your role is, to really model that I can feel these emotions. I can just kind of say them out loud and be like, I'm really feeling frustrated right now. This is really hard. And that's okay, right? Like, we can figure this out together. What can we do next? And rather than feeling like, oh, this is bad, we have to put a band aid on it, we have to make it go away, it's
hmm
more like, yeah, this is just our brain having an experience. It's telling us what's important to us. What can we do next to figure out what's going to be most helpful in this moment to help us learn from it and move through it rather than trying to quickly get it away because it's not a
Sure.
bad thing. It's just trying to tell us something about the situation.
Absolutely. This is so helpful because I mean, I'm definitely guilty of, wanting to take like a fly swatter and quash that feeling, even in myself and for my son. When, to your point, I mean, two things can coexist, right? You can have that fly spinning around with the negative thoughts,
Mhm.
and yet next to you is a beautiful landscape, and you're like, this is actually a gorgeous day. I'm happy to be here. I'd rather be here than inside an office, right?
Mhm.
So the two things can coexist. And I mean, even just like the beautiful thing about golf is, each hole, you could have a really poor hole that you do really bad on. And then the next hole, you're like, you're smashing it. You're doing it completely and you catch up. So that's the beautiful thing in it. And for golfers and parents chasing performance goals, how can they balance ambition with joy and gratitude for the game?
Such a great question. I think with any sport, golf especially, because it's so tied to an individual score, that we get really caught up in what these performance outcomes that we're working towards are. So for a young player, it might be, I want to break 40 on 9 holes, or I want to win a tournament, right? There are these specific outcomes that we are working towards. And we don't want to take that away, right? Those are like the big goals that they're the drivers, they're what everyone gets excited about. But there's also the question of how do we get there? And that's where it's really important to kind of shift from this outcome focus to the process focus.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say I want to break 40 on 9 holes or 45, whatever it is. How am I going to do that? Right. If I go out and I tee off and I say, okay, I just want to shoot under 45. And then I have a bad hole. Let's say I make a double on this hole. Now all of a sudden that score is under threat, right? And it feels frustrating and I feel worried about my score. I'm thinking about my score. And as we all know as golfers, like that makes it really hard to play when you're just worrying about your score, worrying about future holes. And so what can really be helpful in that moment is to say, okay, yes, I'm working towards these bigger goals, but how am I going to do that? And that's really to look at what helps me play my best golf. When I'm playing my best golf, what does it feel like? And usually golfers will say something like, I'm having fun. I'm not really worrying about my score and I'm really present. I'm really in the present moment. And so we can take that and say, okay, well, how can we turn those into our goals and let the outcome take care of itself, right? Because what you're basically saying is that if I focus on having fun, committing to my shots and staying really present on the shot that I have right now, I'm probably going to play pretty good.
Yeah.
And probably at the end of the day, I'm going to walk off the course and feel proud about how I played and probably play better too.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's shifting like, okay, we have these outcome goals. Those are like our North Stars that we're kind of working towards. But also, how am I actually going to get there? I'm going to get there by having fun, being grateful for the opportunities I have, for the people I get to spend time with, enjoying the experience, and also just committing to the shots that I hit. And
Mm-hmm.
that can break it down into small things that are in the player's control rather than focusing on the pressure of trying to shoot these scores or make these outcomes happen when we really can't control that, right? Once that ball leaves the club, it's going to be what it's going to be. We don't know what
Right.
anyone else is going to do. And so we can't control that, but we can control the joy that we're having in the experience and the things that we're doing shot to shot.
What advice would you give coaches, and what are some things you've seen? Again, you don't have to name anybody, but like where coaches have maybe missed the mark from just your experience that they could do better with working with junior golfers?
It's a great question. I think everyone has the intention of doing their best for junior golfers, right? And none of us are perfect. But I think something that could be really helpful for coaches that work with junior golfers is to work with them to set goals that are challenging, but also realistic to the point where they're having a lot of opportunities to feel success. And then also to sit in that success and help them celebrate it, right? I think a lot of times as coaches, we, and myself included as a mental coach, right, we get excited when we see progress and then it's like, okay, what's the next goal? What's the next goal? And it's really helpful to kind of slow down and say, okay, great. You set this goal, you met it, right? You worked really hard. How did you do that? Right? Like, let's figure out how you made that happen so that the child has the opportunity to, number one, connect the dots of what did they do to make it happen? And to number two, just like feel really good about the fact that they've hit that milestone or that goal before they turn to what's next, because it's always going to be that way
Chasing the
forever.
next, right? Yeah. To your point.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's always like that. So I think that that's really helpful as a reminder for coaches of just setting realistic goals that are also challenging. We want them to be stretched a little bit, but also allowing them to celebrate that and to be happy when those things are met.
I love that. One, just I'm thinking of an example of my son's coach, who is really great. So my son did a tournament with boys that he's been competing with for a while. They're always placing in the top 3 and he's always coming in last. And recently he came in second place, which was amazing for his boost of his morale and self-esteem.
Yeah.
And, you know, when we went to practice the next time to see coach, I mean, he showed off the medal. There was cheers, excitement, hugs. And then he sat him down. He's like, I want you to know something. And of course, you know, I'm proud of you, et cetera. He's like, your next tournament, you're not going to play very well. And even I was like taken aback. Like, I kind of was like, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
But he explained that usually when you have a big win like that, you go in the next time with this expectation and it's not met, and then it gets in your head, and then you end up doing your worst. And boy, was he right. My son was back in last place. But because the coach was so good about giving that expectation ahead of time, and for myself too, because in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, he's second place. Let's go for first next time. But I'm
Yeah.
glad that the coach gave us that expectation and reality so that we went into that next tournament with that expectation that you might not do very well. And he didn't. But you know what? There were no tears. He was happy for his friends, and he's still coming off the high of like, well, I won second place last week. So
Yeah.
the fact that the coach painted that picture for us was like amazing. And I'm so glad he did, because I would have not been prepared. I also would have gone in thinking, well, let's shoot for first next time.
Yeah.
So yeah, to your point, setting the expectation is very important. And I'm glad that you touched on that.
Yeah, and I think that that experience with your son is really helpful too because, right, there's a couple things that come up when we have a really big milestone or goal that we've achieved. Number 1, we think it's gonna continue to be like that, right? And so it's like,
Yep.
I'm gonna just play my best every time, or I should be playing my best every time, and of course, that's not realistic, right, in golf or in life or in anything. But there's also this idea that we want to keep the brain open to whatever possibilities while preparing it for what could happen, right? So it's very possible that your son could have had a great tournament, right? We don't want to like say like there's no way that it could be good because your last one was good, but there's also the possibility that you might not play as well,
Sure.
or maybe the competition is better, or whatever it
Right.
is, right? And so just being able to kind of walk through all of the possibilities and
Yeah.
prepare for them, I think is really important for junior golfers because then it's like nothing is a surprise and nothing is
Yeah.
really threatening because it's like,
Sure.
yeah, this is just part of it. I could play really well again. I might
Totally.
struggle a little bit. Either way, I know how to handle it. And I think a lot of that too comes back to this idea for coaches or for parents of focusing on effort over outcomes.
Yeah.
And so this is like, it's not about do you place first, second, or last? It's did you show up prepared and did you try your best
Hmm.
regardless? And I think that that's something that goes above all else in every
Yeah.
category for me.
I love that. And it's kind of the mindset I have when I travel. I always say I prepare for the worst, hope for the best, because you can go in, you go to the airport, you're excited to go on your trip, and weather delays, cranky people, everything is
Mhm.
out of your control the moment you step into the airport. But if you mentally prepare for the worst, then usually there's a chance that it'll go better than you thought, right? But if you go in thinking it's all rainbows and sunshine, you're probably going to have a really bad experience and then not be
Yeah.
mentally prepared for it. So I have to now try to remember to do that on the golf course with my son. You work with players and elite professionals at every level. What are some of the mental habits and routines you see top performers consistently practicing that junior golfers could start learning now that would help them in the long term?
Such a great question. I would say there are a few consistent things I see with golfers at the top levels. Number 1 is prioritizing recovery, and this is
Hmm.
one that young players don't like to hear. They think that they should be practicing all the time, playing in tournaments all of the time, and they don't really have any downtime or anything outside of golf that they do or that they love. And so I think something that high performers really understand is that recovery and rest is just as important as
Right.
practice, for our mind, for our body, for this like healthy longevity in the sport. You have to rest and you have to recover. The second thing that comes up a lot is preparing and trusting yourself to handle whatever comes up. So this kind of goes back to what we were just talking about is like, all right, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to prepare for having my A game, but I'm also going to prepare for challenges that are likely to come up, right? If I know that I get thrown when I have a lead or when I'm playing with someone who's slow or the pace of play is really slow, right? That comes up a lot
Yeah.
for young players. It's like the rounds are 6 hours or whatever they are now. And how do I deal with that, right? Like, what am I going to do to deal with that? And that comes to the third piece, which is just having consistent routines. And consistent meaning that they're in your control and you do them consistently, but they're also flexible so that, let's say you show up and the range is closed. Okay, well, I don't have my typical warm up routine, but I have this other thing that I can do to prepare my body and my mind for that first tee. The flexibility piece is really important because we don't want things so rigid in our routines that if they don't happen, we're panicking, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
completely fall apart, right?
yeah, it's like, okay, no big deal. I know the kind of core things that help me, and that's feeling like I'm stretched out and warm, feeling like I'm focused, and I can do that, whether that's a 30-minute warm up on the range or whether that's I have to go over here and stretch for a few minutes. So it's consistency in that I know the things that help set me up for success and I do them and I choose to do them, but I'm also flexible so that if plan A doesn't go as it goes, I can go to plan B and I'm okay with that. And I think those three things really set top players apart because they don't get so flustered by things that happen outside of their control.
Do you recommend your clients and or parents of junior golfers create kind of that checklist and have like with them? And like you said, I mean, if the range is closed, okay, well, what's the next on the list that I can go focus on? Do you recommend that they do that going
Yeah.
in and kind of reference that each time?
Yeah, I think that that's a great way to do it, right? Is having like a pre-tournament checklist or prep list, whatever it is that, okay, so maybe there are certain things that we do at home, right? Like we have our snacks laid out, we pick the snacks we want, right? The things that we're going to have excited to be in our bag. We've got our water ready, we've got our clubs ready, everything is set there. And then maybe once we get to the course, it's like, okay, typically I have a 30-minute warm up block where I do like some time on the range, I do some time in the short game area, but ultimately, the goal of that is to number one, warm my body up. And number two, like get a feel for the speed of the greens and how they react, let's say. And so it's like, okay, well, if the range is closed, what can I do instead? And you don't need to have every scenario, but it's could be helpful as a parent to kind of talk through that with your child, especially if you know that those are possibilities. Like, let's say weather, and there might be a delay, and maybe like you don't have the time to warm up or your warm up's going to be choppy or whatever it is, you have the checklist, but it's not necessarily the things that you're going to do, but it's
Gotcha.
how you want to prepare yourself, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for touching on that.
Yeah.
How do you personally define success in golf? And then how do you help clients define that for themselves?
Such a good question. You have so many
Here,
good questions.
thank you.
How do I define success in golf for myself? Well, for a long time, success for me was shooting good scores and finishing certain places in tournaments based on how I felt that I could do compared to other people. And that really was not helpful for me at all. That's like kind of what led me to falling out of love with the game.
Yeah,
And
a
so
lot of
for me
pressure.
now yeah, it's a lot of pressure. So for me now with where I am and just like my career and golf is something I do just because I love it. It's not like a scholarship. It's not anything that is has that pressure on it. And so for me now, success in golf is going out there and giving it my best, which means being focused, being prepared, right? Leaning on those routines, but also just being able to enjoy it and be the person that I want to be out there. I think when I was in college, really struggling with the mental game, I was very upset or angry, would be like the two emotions that I felt on the golf course. It was like I was either frustrated with myself and maybe I took that out on other people, or I was upset and I wasn't enjoying my experience on the course. And so for me, success now looks like being able to go out there and just have fun no matter what I shoot. That's really, really important to me. And so that's kind of what that looks like. And so for the players that I work with, this is something that I talk about with every single one of them. And it's really helping them define it for themselves, right? And I think, especially because we're talking about junior golfers, letting them define success for themselves is so important. It goes back to that autonomy piece of like they're choosing this for themselves, right? And so, really, I ask players to think about if you were to go out onto the golf course and no one was going to know your score, no one was going to know where you finished on the leaderboard, what would success look like to you? And so it takes some of those outcomes and score pieces out of it and helps them focus in on what really matters to them. And usually it's some line of like, I want to enjoy it. I want to meet new people, right? A lot of times it's like the social connection piece that I think we forget about a lot because golf is an individual sport. But I think we all kind of are striving for more connection and community in the sport. And usually it's some piece of just like, I want to show myself that I can challenge myself and get better. And it's not so tied to like the score. And so that's something that I definitely have a lot of players sit with is what does that look like if scores were not part of the
Yeah,
equation?
I love that and how so
Absolutely.
I can tell that you bring a lot of value to your clients. I'd like to end on, which By the way, if you have more that you want to touch on, I can ask some more questions too if I've missed anything. But I think the final question before I get into how people can find you, I'd like to end on what is one piece of advice you would give parents listening or, the caddies
Mhm.
that want to raise not only a strong junior golfer, but a confident, happy, resilient young person in life?
This is one of the things that I am most passionate about is that golf is one thing that these kids love to do, but it's not everything, right? And so a lot of the mental skills and tools that I work with young players on is giving them tools for life. And so I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I could give parents is to let your child be the driver. What is it that they want to do? What is it that they hope to achieve? And to think of themselves, yes, as a caddy, as a parent, maybe sometimes they're parent caddy coach, maybe they're wearing a lot of hats, but think about how they can best support their player and foster this ability for their child to know that they can make mistakes and it's okay, and that nothing about their worth or their value has anything to do with what they achieve.
Hmm.
And it really goes back to like, yeah, what are they enjoying about the sport? Are they making progress? Are they challenging themselves? Are they learning to deal with new obstacles that come up? And are they doing that in a way that they can be proud of day to day rather than, did they win? Did they hit this milestone achievement? I think that's always the biggest piece is just like allowing these children and young players to enjoy the game and to grow through it rather than feeling like they have to fix it or they have to make sure that everything is always exactly as it's planned to be.
Yeah, I love that. And it's interesting because, many times I've taken my son out to just golf for fun. He gets paired up with adults. And when they find out, oh, he does tournament junior golf, they're immediately impressed. They never ask, oh, what's his ranking? Has he come in first place? They don't ask anything of that. They're just impressed that a kid out there is chasing the dream, that they're willing to show up. And I try to remind him that and other junior golfers that I meet, like, you realize that you're probably smoking most adults out
Yeah,
there. And when you go and play with adults, they're like, you're, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old and you're playing tournaments. They're always like taken aback. And I think that puts in perspective to me just how impressive it is for all young junior golfers, no matter what they're scoring, no matter if they're coming in last place, just showing up is half the battle, right?
absolutely. Being willing to go out there and take the risk of it being
Yeah.
vulnerable, right? You could
Yes.
you could give it your all, you could put everything on the table and it might not be enough, but that's a skill that's going to take them throughout their whole life and it gives them the
Absolutely.
opportunities to grow and improve.
Definitely. I think every kid out there that's competing, I see them, I'm like, they are courageous. Cause I don't think at that age, any age, I mean, honestly, even in high school, I don't think I would have had the courage to go out there and do that with all eyes on you and everything. So I really admire kids that have the courage to do that. You're a wealth of knowledge, so thank you. Um, Alyssa, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think that our audience is going to get a lot of value out of this. And I would love for all the parents listening to find you. So can you please tell the guests listening how they can find you online and Instagram and, even hire you to be their mental coach for their child?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a few different ways where you can reach out to me. So Instagram is really my main channel. That's just at my name, at Alyssa Morahan. And I have a lot of free content on there. You also can go in and book an intro call with me where we can talk about what working with your player might look like and make sure it's a good fit. You can also contact me via email. That's alyssa@alyssamorahan.com. And that's also my website, alyssamorahan.com. So pretty easy across the board. It's just my name, and that's where kind of all of my resources live. And we can talk about what would be best to support your young player.
Sounds good. And for everyone listening, in the show notes, you'll be able to find all the links to connect with Alyssa and reach out to her. And I encourage you all to go follow her because she really does put a lot of great free content out there. I share a lot of her stuff because it so resonates with junior golfers and parents. And she has a lot of great mindset tips. So please give her a follow. And if you've enjoyed this episode, like, subscribe, and share. Please share this with other parents to get this wonderful knowledge out there. Alyssa, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Alicia.